The Lord be with you. And with your spirit. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. The Pharisees approached Jesus and asked, "Is it lawful for a husband to divorce his wife?" They were testing him. He said to them in reply, "Why did Moses command you? What did Moses command you?" They replied, "Moses permitted a husband to write a bill of divorce and dismiss her." But Jesus told them, "Because of the hardness of your hearts, he wrote this commandment. But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. So therefore, what God has joined together, no man, no human being must separate." In the house, the disciples again questioned Jesus about this. He said to them, "Whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery against her. And if she divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Do y'all know what the primary purpose of marriage is? May have talked about it before, but the primary purpose of marriage is to get your spouse to heaven. Okay, that's what it's designed for. And we all maybe kind of lower the bar that a little bit and think, well, the primary purpose of marriage is for my spouse to make me happy, or vice versa. And that's not, untrue, but it's not the primary purpose of marriage. The primary purpose is to get our spouse to heaven, to set our eyes focused on heaven, right? So I like to say sometimes that marriage, husband and wife are like two eyes of one body that help us contemplate the depths of heaven. So like when our eyes are focused on the Lord, then they're working together to help us to contemplate eternal realities, right? But sometimes we're just focused on each other, and it's just like a little bit of a battle there. So we need to all right, zoom out and focus on heaven, and then maybe things make a little bit more sense in the marriage department. I'm not married, so y'all tell me if I'm right or wrong. Okay, so but that's kind of the church's ideal vision of marriage, is to help each other get to heaven. Okay, and we are not there to do it alone. So we have the sacrament of matrimony that our Lord promises to be there to help us to work together with us in encountering Him and encountering eternal realities. So we have the sacrament of matrimony, which our Lord talks about today. And that is a covenant, right? What God has joined, let no man rent asunder. It's a covenant, meaning God promises to be with the couple. It's a sacred pact with God, therefore it's unbreakable. It's not just a contract, right? It's with our Lord. And it's not just, you're in this forever. No, it's I promise to be there with you. That's the deeper reality of the sacrament of matrimony that we hear about today. And what's cool about it and why the church always holds it up in such high dignity, especially as us as Catholics, we're called to receive the sacrament of matrimony. And if we haven't received that sacrament and we are living in a marital union, then we're not in communion with the church. We don't get to receive communion because we're not in communion with the church. And why is that? And I think it's because of the purpose or the reality of what's going on here at the Eucharist. The reality is that that's kind of God's marriage with us in a spiritual way, right? I think of this line that we heard today twice. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Okay, it's used in Genesis. We read that in our first reading. It's used here in the Gospels. And the only other time I can think of it being used is in Ephesians chapter 5 when St. Paul says, for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And then he adds, this is a great mystery, and I mean between Christ and the church. Okay, the little act there on the cross is our Lord's marriage to you and I. in a mysterious way. But that reality goes on at every Eucharist. So it's a covenantal reality going on here. And if we don't have that covenantal reality in our marriage, then the two conflict. Okay, that's some of the reality going on here. This is meant to nourish that, your wedding and marriage, and to keep our eyes focused on our Lord, to help each other get to heaven. Okay, hopefully I haven't lost you yet, but that's kind of where we get this understanding. Hey, if your marriage isn't blessed by the church, you're not in communion with the church. Okay, now Holy Father is encouraged us to help each other, or help walk with each other in these particular situations. So the church teaches that marriage is indissoluble, meaning to death do we part, right? And we get this from our Lord himself, who says, what God has joined, no human being must separate. That's the line we take in holding up the indissolubility of marriage, but also the reality that did God join this wedding? Did God join this union? We all know that marriages out there, we know of marriages or maybe are involved in one that have failed on the human realm. Okay? So what do we do with that? We just, up the creek? Or no, our Lord has, the church in her mercy has given us this process called an annulment. It is not a Catholic divorce. It goes back to see, did God join this wedding? Was it a sacramental marriage in the beginning? Right? And if so, then we have to deal with that. But also we can look at no, these people had no idea what they were getting into. They were pressured from various means. And we take that into account and be like, the church and her authority can say, this marriage was not sacramental in the beginning. It doesn't mean that it never existed. I mean, it was on paper and there may even be children involved. But in the eyes of God, it was not a covenantal union. You know what I'm saying? So the church and her authority can do that. That's what the annulment process is. It's good also to know, because marriage didn't work and we're divorced does not mean that's a sin per se. There's even legitimate reasons to separate, but it's the remarriage part of it. Okay? And that's what our Lord says today. Whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery against her. It's the remarriage part. So the church, just to throw this out too, the church always presumes validity upon marriage. So if we were married in the church and then that marriage was at least civilly divorced, we still presume that it was valid until the church and her authority through the annulment process says, it wasn't. It wasn't a valid sacramental marriage. So I just throw that out there too, that we don't, presume just because we were civilly divorced that we're now, free to do whatever. I just hold that up because our Lord takes marriage very seriously, and so do we in the Catholic Church. But it's not just, there's no alternative ways of looking at this. The annulment process is a great act of mercy, and I've seen it really work in so many times people's lives to really heal and allow us to move forward in the light of the Lord. So if you're in a particular situation that might need that, come see the church. We'll talk through this. We'll walk through this. It's a great act of mercy. But I guess what I want to point to even more beautifully is the primary purpose of marriage, which is to help your spouse get to heaven. And like I say, it's like two eyes of the one body that help husband and wife contemplate the depths of heaven. Right? So we got to keep our eyes focused on that high bar that our Lord sets for us today. So marriage is a great gift. I'm a product of one, and I just know that our Lord and our church here is to help strengthen the bond of marriage.